of biodiversity, and we will present you some outputs and have some discussion on this topic. So through this session, we'll beyond data, we will address the topic of knowledge for MSP and from MSP. So the question of sharing knowledge and disseminating this piece of information is very important for MSP as an input for planners. And also as an output, so how to share information and data from the MSP process to the stakeholder in order to have the decision enforced. So all of these questions are addressed in the SIMAtlantic project within different parts. So we have a case study dedicated on the communication on maritime spatial plans, and there is also a cross-cutting teams addressing the data use and sharing. So the idea is to present you results on this component of the project. So the session will take place in two parts. So the first one is the presentation of the project results. So we will have actually three presentations from the three French partners of the project. So the show, which is the hydrographic and oceanographic service of the French Navy, the CEREMA, which is the engineering body supporting the MSP process in France, mostly in territorial engineering and socioeconomic topics, and the OFB, which is the French Office for the Biodiversity in charge of environmental aspects. And then we have a Q&A session. So if you want to raise some question to be asked to the speakers, please use the Q&A module of Zoom, and you see that you can vote for each of the questions that are raised by other people, and we'll have a small time to ask questions for each of the three speakers. And the second part of the session will be a panel discussion. So we have the chance to have some representative of competent authority from England, Spain, and France. So we'll explore some key questions related to the topic addressed by the previous presentation. So we have quite a lot of topic to address and few times. So I will give the floor to Adeline Souf from SHOM to present the results of the work done by SHOM within the SIMAtlantic project. So Adeline, the floor is yours. Adeline, I guess you are muted.
I can't hear you, Adeline.
Okay. So maybe waiting for Adeline to find again the sound. Maybe we can move on to the CEREMA presentation and then come back to the show. So Adeline, can you try again? No, doesn't work. So okay, so we'll give the floor to Julien Dilasser from the CEREMA to present the work carried out by CEREMA on the interactive maps for maritime uses, distribution, and stakes. So, Julian, the floor is yours.
Okay, I will now present a cartographic tool proposed by SIMA as part of this task related to data sharing and stakeholder engagement. So it's an exercise to explain specific aspects of spatial data related to the French maritime spatial planning, the document stratégique de façade. It's an interactive map in order to link major socioeconomic interests underlined in the French MSP on the best available data. So the idea of this project is therefore to carry out a pilot for a cartographic tool, allowing users to benefit from the genealogy of data, which made it possible to produce each socioeconomic illustration. The interactive map is therefore not confined solely on a description of the information, but also it contains links, sources, intensity map, etc. So the objective of this task is also to highlight the important issues on the main obstacles for the development of this type of tools, which can be adapted according to the consultation needs. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay. So this project started from an observation on the production of maps in the maritime planning process in France. And as part of the planning process in France, each document stratégique de façade has been the subject of socio-economic issues mapping. As you can see on this slide, this map, as such, does not allow user or project leader to trace the sources of the data. So in this exercise, the CEREMA sought to rely as much as possible on the data collected to produce those summary maps on the 2 DSF concerned by the project. The aim was also to keep the simplified representation of the activities as they are illustrated in the summary map, and suitable to offer an accessible vision of socio-economical issues on the whole Atlantic coast, or the whole French Atlantic coast. So the aim was finally to update the data if possible, and to add some data on other activity to correspond to the themes generally covered by the SIM project. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So the addition of attributes to the illustrated graphic elements represent another added value to the interactive summary map. So to define the information to be displayed in relation to the graphic element of the maps, a benchmark was carried on in order to identify the information commonly used in certain other interactive map exercises. A second selection criteria for information was to maintain consistency with the data retained in the summary maps of the DSF. Indeed, as specified previously, some databases used for the production of summary maps of the DSF are already available, and as soon as possible, these data have been collected and sometimes updated. So, in order to harmonize the final map, the database available for the entire map, has been prioritized. It was the last criteria. So next slide, please. Thanks. So concretely, the cartographic tools, in the cartographic tool, the information relating to the object that was displayed consists of 3 elements. So first, we have the data in itself. It's about quantitative data and figure for each of the selected activity, but also raw data or intensity map for the themes concerned, such as fishing or shipping, as you can see on the right of the slide. Then we have a framework dedicated to the genealogy of the data. It's about links to the website and bibliography sources. And finally, a contextual framework for the future improvement of data aggregations. It was about disclaimer to the state of the data and the links with initial summary maps, and if needed, some notice for new data. It was a new objective for this map. Okay, Next slide, please. And then I will now very quickly evoke some issues that can be brought to light by this exercise. So regarding the cross-border aspect of the realization of this mapping tool, the first issue encountered was that the number of activity affected by the cross-border issue appeared to be limited in the two cross-border area of the French Atlantic coast that are the south of the Bay of Biscay and the English Channel. The other issue about the cross-border has been the ability to find and collect viable data to the geographic area concerned in the allotted time. And finally, in this context, for this exercise, only the fishing activity of a country neighboring France have been retained at this stage. This activity of fishing has the advantage of having a common legal framework for the UO, the Common Fishery Policy, which greatly facilitates the uniform processing of information, in the sense that the concept of practice are uniformly understood in an available database. This question of commonly shared notion is indeed another issue raised by this interactive mapping. At the subnational level, some of the activities represented in the summary map were based on definitions that were sometimes slightly different depending on the DSF, but which could have a significant influence on the final graphic representations. This is the case, for example, for the yachting activity, or for which the concept of navigation basins or the notion of marina meets specific criteria for each document stratégique de façade. In addition to this problem of notions that are not shared, there are then added more political dimension, or in any case relating to a choice of decision maker in a way that of the displaying of activity on the DSF summary maps. So in these maps, the simplified representation of fishing activity or touristic frequentation based on several types of data, such as fishing practice or time spent at sea, were then discussed with a certain professional representative before being added in the final map. It is therefore difficult to trace the sources of data. So finally, we wrote a report reporting all this issue and proposed some preconization and some recommendations, that are therefore being drafted in the final report for this exercise. Most of these recommendations are related to a need for more organization between territories on a joint effort to collect data in order to in future version of the DSF. So that's it for my presentation today.
Okay, thank you, Julien. So I can remind all of the participants that you can ask questions through the Q&A, and at the end of the free presentation, we'll address the question raised. So for this moment, there is no question, so I ask you to feed this time of the session, please. So can we try again with the Shom, Adeline? Can we hear you now and move to your presentation? Okay, so I guess that Adeline still face technical issues, so we'll try to switch the presentation. So I will move on the presentation of the work carried out by the OFB. So it will be me who will present this work. In the SIMAtlantic project, the OFB worked on perspective for the communication on maritime spatial plans, taking advantage of a web-based solution. So as you all probably know, the stakeholder engagement is one of the main aspect of the MSP. It's considered as one of the main pillars of the process. But the fact is that these processes often end up with a very huge document with a high level of complexity. So there is quite a lot of pages, and so there is a complex topic to address, interconnected topics, and I often heard stakeholders saying that taking ownership of hundreds of pages in very few time, it's not possible for them. So the issue is to have a low stakeholder ownership on the MSP processes. So the challenge we try to address is to provide a more understandable explanation on the plan contents. So try to have a simplified content to provide, and as well to try to make more understood and make more clear what are the relation between each element of the plan, and try to better explain what are the why the decision were taken. So to explain the objective of the MSP, and this to achieve a better stakeholder ownership. So the case study we focused on was not directly a French MSP plan, because first these plans were not available at the beginning of the SIMAtlantic project, and as well the governance of the MSP is quite complex and large, and it was difficult to have a demonstrative action on that. So we decided to focus on the management plan of marine nature park, which is a type of kind of MPA in France, what we call the multi-objective MPA. So it's an MPA sharing several type of objectives. So for sure, nature conservation, but also the support of maritime uses, sustainable maritime uses, and also to try to raise public awareness. So actually, the objective of this MPA is quite close to the MSP at the sea basin level in France, and so we dedicated our work on the one marine nature park, which is called Mer des Pertuis et Estuaires de la Gironde, which is an area located in the Atlantic front of France. And as I said, so the management plan structure is very similar to the French sea basin plans, which are the MSP implementation. So the central element is what we call stake. So what is important to consider in the plan. So it could be ecological stakes as well as socio-economic stakes. So for maritime uses. And on each of these stakes, we set one or several objectives to achieve through the management of the MPA, and to achieve this objective, we carried out actions, and we also put in place some surveys to monitor the achievement of the objective, and all of these elements can be mapped. So to go through the website we have developed through the project. So here is a screenshot of the welcome page of the portal. So you can see that it's separated in two parts. So on the left part, you have a map the mapping module, which display we can display a lot of different data related to the management plan of the marine nature park. And on the right side, you have the content module, so which display every contextual information and every text related to the management plan. So users can enter through the right side of the portal by, if they are interested in several topics, or if they want to access to a part of the management plan, and they can also enter into the management plan through the geographical aspect by exploring the left part of the portal. So I take an example. If I am a user interested in the professional fishing, which is one of the main topic of the park, and if I click on the tab here, I can access to a fact sheet describing the stake related to this topic. So as you can see on the right side, there is an explanation, written explanation of what is going on with this topic and why it's important to consider it through the management of the park. And on the left side, you can see that there is a data that are displayed to describe the stakes. So here, for instance, these are fishing grounds for particular fishing uses. And on the right side, on the bottom of the page, you can access to through several tabs associated to the objective, the action, and the monitoring. You have the list of what are the objectives related to the stakes, or what are the action we carried out related to the stake, or what are the monitoring. So, for instance, here there is 3 objectives related to the fishing activity. And if I take the third one, which is about the diversity of fishing stock to be exploited, and if I click on this button, I access to the description of this objective. So there is a short description, and also you have again the tabs to see what the other element related to this objective. So you can go back to the stake, see from where come this objective, and you also have the opportunity to see what the park is doing to achieve this objective. So if you click on the tab action, you have the list of the action that are carried out to achieve this objective, and you can click on in the same way as the other. You can click on the action and access to a fact sheet describing the action. And the left part, the mapping part, is adapting and trying and display relevant data to describe that. And user can also zoom in and zoom out and ask the data. So this is a very short glimpse of the functioning of the portal. And for the perspective, we have several categories of stakeholder that we want to use this portal. And first is the management board, so the people involved in the governance of the park, and the objective is to have them more to take decisions in more direct relation to the objectives set in the management plan, but we also aim to have the tool used by the economic stakeholder to support them when they are planning their future activities, or when they are trying to apply for a license on the area of the park. And we can also raise public awareness with this kind of tool. And the last perspective is try to implement this kind of tool on the Sea Basin strategic document, which is the French implementation. So I thank you for your attention, and I will try to give the floor to Adeline if you're back.
I hope so.
It's okay. So I try to go back to your presentation. So improvisation, last minute improvisation. So okay, so now it's time to Adeline to present the SHOM outcomes of the project. So Adeline.
Well, thank you, Neil, and sorry for this failed beginning. So I will present the catalog and the overview of the marine spatial planning relevant data of the SIMAtlantic project. This project has been performed by Magali Abjean. She has been working on this for 2.5 years, and unfortunately, she cannot do the presentation today. Can you just change slide? Yeah. Great. So in terms of background information, as said before, the SIMAtlantic project is building on previous projects where we already acknowledged that there are different methods of sharing spatial data. And we need to improve this information sharing and go towards a more centralized a tool to provide the MSP geographic information. We already had identified numerous existing geoportal and data producers, and this was used as a basis to collect information and to grow wider. We also had some information regarding shared web services, but as in 2019 the MSP plans were not already all performed, we had to update this information and to grow on that. And some demonstration geoportals were already existing, and we tried to build on those. So if you can go forward, Neil. So in terms of general objectives, so we were trying to improve the data and the MSP plans use and sharing to understand how we work and organize the data within the SIMAtlantic countries, and to define the stakeholders' needs regarding the spatial data and services, and try to centralize all those data in a data portal. If you can go further. Yeah, great. So in terms of project outputs, there are several. First, there was a survey that has been shared to the main stakeholders, and this survey report is providing us information on the data organization within the project countries and their needs. We also made some country fact sheets, one per country, in order to have information regarding national MSP and their geoportals. There's a summary table that compare all the access means to the national plans, because they might not be on a single geoportal. There is also a demonstration data portal that was made to centralize and access all those data. An analysis has been performed dedicated to MSP plan limits to consolidate those limits, and a catalog of the resource for data use and sharing has been performed as well. All those information can be found on the services mspdata.eu as well as on the website of the SIMAtlantic. Can you go further? Next slide. Yeah, great. So on the data geoportal, what we wanted was to have an easy access for the and user-friendly to the different stakeholders. So there's different access either through data catalog or map catalog, and then it would be depending on the topics. And you also have a keyword advanced search. Because we are working in a transboundary with context with different countries, these informations are have been translated in the different languages, so French, English, Portuguese, and Spanish. And when you access to the data, you can find with a little flag from which country, who is the data owner of the information. You also have the data producer that is being displayed on the bottom right of the portal, and because we wanted to have to provide the information for the stakeholder to use the data, there's access to metadata when available, and also to web service. You can import or export. Can you go further? Next slide, please. So in terms of main information related to cross-border cooperation, there's a common need to use and share more information, especially on 3 topics, which are pressure and impacts, maritime boundaries, and physical characteristics. And also a need has been raised regarding methods, guidelines, and standards to share the data. At national level, all countries have or plan to have a geoportal to communicate on the MSP plan. And there's an issue to share this information, which is because it's usually in the national language. And it might not have metadata, which might have impact on how you use the data. Or understand the data. Can you go next slide, please? Yeah. So for the European geoportal, it is seen as a valuable tool by all the stakeholders. It should display the 3 main ideas that I said before, so maritime boundaries, pressure and impacts, and physical characteristics, as well as the MSP zonings and information regarding the management policies. Some of the features that are really looked after would be that it is able to harvest data, so that the data visualized is always up to date, as well as translated in different language, and to have metadata to understand how to use the information. For the drawing up of plans, the number of plans depend really on countries. It can go from 1 to 11. The information might be displayed on different geoportals, and there's not always. And it might be and the approach might be different, whether it's on strategic objectives or distribution of activities and uses. To conclude with the last slide, if possible, yeah. So data sharing is, of course, a major leverage to improve the understanding and to tackle challenges of cross-border users. And the main idea is that because the data is really scattered with different situation and architecture, we need a geoportal to centralize those information. Within SIMAtlantic project, we tried to provide comparative analysis and elements of understanding on the organization of MSP data, of MSP process and data in the different countries to help contribute to the Atlantic vision. And of course, it should not stop here, and efforts need to be pursued to improve the interoperability of the data. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Adeline, for this presentation. So I guess we can move on. So we'll just come back to the good slide of the presentation. So we're just on time, it's perfect. So we can move on to the Q&A session. So I will stop sharing my screen, I guess, and we can have a view on the speakers' faces. Okay. So at this time we have one question raised through the Q&A session module of Zoom. So feel free to feed this Q&A. We have about 10 minutes to discuss on that. So I'll try to ask the one. So there is a question from Luis about the awareness of the interaction between the different maritime clusters in the portal or tool. So I guess this question, the portal or tool you are speaking about, is the one I presented on the maritime, the portal that try to present the maritime plans. Interaction is always quite tough topic to address. So there, through this kind of tool, there is no automatic calculation of interaction, but when a user explore the management plan, he can overlap the data layer to try to figure out where are the main areas of interaction between several topics. So for instance, if I am a user interested in marine birds, for instance, I can explore the part of the dedicated to the marine birds. What are the objectives? What are the actions? And on the left side of the portal, there is several data displayed, trying to explain where are the main area of interest for the birds. And if I want to figure out what could be the interaction with the fishing activity, for instance, I can go through the list of the data layer available and display in the same time the fishing data and try to overlap and figure out where are the main overlapping. So it's not a proper evaluation of interaction, but it can give you some clue on what could be the issues. And this tool offers also the possibility for us, the managers, to display directly data layer, results of some analysis, interaction analysis. And if we want to point out several interaction, we can create a dedicated fact sheet to that and link it to the topic of interest. So this is a more communication tool than an analysis one. So there is a question through the chat, or there is quite a lot of questions through the chat actually. Okay, a question of how to address data on dynamic activities, such as the fishing one. So it's not always easy to represent this kind of activity. So maybe a question for Julien on the management of this kind of data and the release of an assessment on the issues and stakes related to this kind of moving activities.
Well, actually, this is an issue that we have reached for this study, that some data are contested or discussed between actors before being cartographed. So this is really an issue, but I have no really answer to apport to the world study about this kind of dynamic activity. But this is something that we have reached for this report. So maybe one of you have a better answer to bring.
Yes, no, it's an ongoing question, this kind of representation, and there's a link with the communication and the interaction, direct interaction with the stakeholder to try to interpret and represent properly the area of interests for this kind of activity. So it's not, according to me, it's not only a question of data management and processing, but also a question of communication and interaction with stakeholders. Well, a question from Raoul about the mismatch or the differences or the artifacts due to the lack of standardization between data sets across borders due to the lack of standardization of different international research teams. So maybe a question for Adeline, how to manage this kind of difficulties?
Well, at the moment, well, it's really an issue that has been pinpointed, and we are there's a technical expert group from the EU that is working on data for MSP. So that's really one of their core that's on one of their core topic, and of course we are looking at how to try to have a more organized or standardized way, because at the moment some of the data cannot always be all put at on the same web portal, or you can put the data but you won't have the same level of information linked to the data. And regarding the TEG group, the technical expert group of the EU regarding data for MSP, there should be a publication very soon on the data model, at least, and the work will continue. So it's an ongoing process to try to answer this question.
Okay. Maybe another question, maybe quite large, about the categories of data that can be considered as relevant for the MSP. So it's quite a broad question. So what kind of data can be considered as relevant for MSP? So Julien or Adeline, do you want to try to find an answer to this large question?
Well, I have maybe a part of an answer for this. I think it's really context dependent. It really depends on the objective of the project leaders for the MSP, because we have different type of MSP, and this is actually the main issue that needs to be addressed for the future, to be sure, to be clear in the objectives, to help with to define the good data to be used then.
Okay, thank you, Julien. I guess there is no more question raised through the Q&A module, and we are almost on time to move through on through the next part of the session, which is the panel discussion. So maybe we can move on that. So I will ask Oscar to share his screen with all of us to start this session. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to move on the next slide. Okay, so the second part of the session will be dedicated to a panel discussion on three topics related to the project action we presented you during the first part of the session. So for this to answer and to give some thoughts on this topic, we are very pleased to welcome representative of competent authority from England, Spain, and France. So I will thank Amy Balding and Neil Gray from the Marine Management Organization, who are both marine planners for this organization in England. From Spain, Sagrario Arieta Alga from the Ministry, from the Ecological Transition of Spain, and who is a coordinator for the question of maritime spatial planning, accepted to join us, so thank you. And then from France, Hervé Tréhan, which is the deputy head of the directorate dedicated to the public policy coordination, which is in the South Atlantic region, sea basin in France, which is the competent authority to carry out the MSP process in France in one of our 4 sea basins. Will give the French vision on the question. So next slide, please, Oscar. So and maybe you can give some explanation on this slide, Oscar.
Sure. So thank you, Neil. So as a part of the panel discussion, we will be involving the audience through the use of Slido. And this is in order to generate word clouds for each of the 3 main questions. We recommend using a mobile phone or another separate device, but you can also open Slido in a browser tab. Please either scan the QR code or go to the web address and enter the code as shown on the screen. And when the word cloud is shown on the PowerPoint, it will automatically display on your chosen device. And whilst it is displayed, you will be able to enter words into the word clouds and see the results live. Thank you, and I'll hand back to Neil.
Okay, thank you, Oscar. So I'll try to see if we can share our thought on the different questions through these word clouds. So can you move on to the next slide, please? So the first of the 3 topics we wanted to address with our panelists is about data sharing and maybe more cross-border data sharing. So the question behind that is do you address through your MSP processes some topics that particularly needs data sharing, or did you face some issues that can be solved by data sharing? And did you try to share data with the neighboring countries? Did you use the IT tools, and was it useful and supporting? what can be the issues related to that and the perspective. So yes, the question about the cross-border data sharing. So I can give the floor to Amy or Neil to give the perspective from England, and invite attendees to type words for the word cloud. So thank you.
Thanks, Neil. I'll take this one. So just start off with the issues then. I think Adeline summarised those quite well earlier in her presentation. The issues and challenges were quite similar for us with what she had with the geoportal. So just a couple of high-level issues where obviously the governance and the framework that we follow in England is a lot different to everyone else's. So while we've got the UK Marine Policy Statement as the UK level consistent framework, the legislation that's in place to manage the different sectors and protect the environment can be different between governments, even within the UK, never mind between countries. So this was one of the main problems, and I think this is also translated to developers and applicants who are trying to develop within the marine area, having to tackle those different administrative challenges. So that was one of the main issues, and then another one was the environment. So we all have our own policies and our own data with regards to our own marine environment, but it doesn't really. The environment doesn't respect those boundaries. It doesn't respect lines on maps, and so again, policies and data needs to be consistent between countries. So in order to address these issues, it's all about engagement, really. Engaging regularly with neighbouring administrations through engagement, through consultation channels, and carrying out also compatibility testing with other plans through development at regular stages, but also building on that collaboration. So more work on communication and engagement. In terms of actual data sharing, some data sets which will be included in your geoportal, which are useful to share, are things like sort of to future-proof the plans and the data, sort of like cable data to increase awareness of where current cables are located, but also to indicate where future cables may be laid. Similar to that, shipping data, which I think was mentioned earlier as well, routing systems where cargo comes from and into, and that helps to protect being economically important shipping routes between countries. And then we've got location of renewable energy. So we discussed offshore wind earlier as well, and it's helpful to share that sort of information, to also consider cumulative impacts, which I think was mentioned this morning. So anything to do with cumulative impacts, any data related to that is also worth sharing. So they're just a few examples of potential data sets to share. In terms of IT tools and services, similar to the French portal, we have our own Explore Marine Plans portal, which has data related to our marine plan policies. And again, it'll be data that's also on that geoportal. But any particular or any mapping system, ArcGIS, I think one of the main issues, again, there is compatibility between systems that different countries are using. And there are also other data sets that'll sit behind each country's plans. So evidence that sits behind the sustainability appraisal, the habitat regulations assessment. There's a whole load of different evidence that sits behind there as well. And like I said, the geoportal, it does sound quite similar to the Explore Marine plans which we have. But again, the issues there is around the licenses to share data and host data on different systems. But I think this will be a really good tool particularly for people using the plans and using different plans within the same area. I think it'll be a really useful tool. So just my thoughts there. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Amy. So I give the floor directly to Sagrario to waste too much time. So, Sagrario, the floor is yours for the Spanish version.
Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everybody, and I would like to thank SIMAtlantic project to invite me to participate in this panel session, which indeed is really interesting. And I have to say that the question for me is not easy at all to answer. So I will just express how we have done it in this moment and how I think we should do it in the coming years regarding this data sharing at the transboundary level. Okay, so what we have done in Spain for the development of the first maritime spatial plans is to build these plans mainly based on national level data. So the main source of data are national, and from that starting point, we have tried to build the maps following our own data structure, our own statistics, etc. And then we have also, of course, built our geoportal. It is available for everybody, and we have made some transboundary consultations. We have shown our neighboring countries this geoportal. So in theory, they have the access to this data from the maritime spatial plans in Spain. But I understand that when we start to go into deeper details in this planning process, we all of us agree that we should make a greater effort for transboundary coherence and for data harmonization and for having the same data structure, data schemes, etc., interoperability. All of these complex issues of data management that, in fact, we should work for that in the coming years. What I also think is that, in fact, we are not somehow starting from scratch. In the marine policies, we have a lot of experiences before MSP, where we have at the European level worked a lot on the data sharing and data harmonization. For example, I'm talking about the common fisheries policies and the fisheries data, but not only that, we have the experience of marine environmental data, where we have a lot of exigence from the Marine Strategy Framework Directive and also the Regional Seas Convention, the OSPAR Convention, where we have been working a lot of time on data sharing and data harmonization. And we should, Atlantic countries, make the effort to take this experience and put them on board on the MSP data processing and data management, and learn from that experience and somehow build from them, not start from scratch. So from that point, I think that it has been very, very interesting, the work that has been done in the SIMAtlantic project regarding this analysis, both at the national level and at the Atlantic level, of what has been done and what still we should improve. And I hope that in the coming years we will be ready to, once we have all the plans somehow approved and in place, to work together to increase this coherence and this data sharing for the coming years. And that's all my reflections for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarario. So I can give the floor to Hervé for the French vision on the French vision on this topic.
Yes, I think in French we have the same method, the same approach as in Spain. The MSP, it was a French national exercise, and we cannot share data or have real cross-border information with the other country, because it was difficult to succeed in MSP with only French data and French stakeholders. It was really a challenge for the first time, and maybe next time we will. It will be easier to talk to Spanish or other countries to have a real discussion, a real cross-border discussion, because with the MSP, each country is free to choose its own method, and each state has its own stakes, and it's difficult to consider other country stakes as an input for the first time of MSP. And sometimes when it's on sensitive subjects, we have to talk with, we have diplomatic rules. We cannot discuss with other countries very free, because sometimes it's we have to talk with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs first, and so it's very difficult to for the first time of MSP, it was difficult to share data and to share informations with foreign countries. So maybe with Spain we will talk for the next years, and I think it will be very interesting, because we have difficulties with different scale and different stakes to make a real MSP exercise.
Okay, thank you very much, Hervé. So just to have an eye on the word cloud on this topic, so it's quite interesting. We have quite a lot of words raised. So there is, you can see that there is the topic, technical topic appears in main position, so with the word interoperability, and there is also words related to the technical question, but we also have in quite good places topics about governance and diplomatic rules that could play, as said by our panelists, a very important role. And we also have some ideas about the scales and how to deal with different scales, and also to base the analysis on the ecosystem scales, ecosystem which doesn't know any border or administrative border. So okay, so I can I guess we can move on to the next topic, not to be too late in the time, but I guess we are okay. So the next topic is about the stakeholder engagement on the definition of their area of interest. So one basis of the MSP processes are to assess and to share with the stakeholder their own stakes and area of interest. And the question is, should it be done through data processing, and if yes, how? Is it more a matter of stakeholder consultation, or is it a mix of the both? So we are interested to have your view on this kind of question and your feedback on your experiences. So maybe Amy or Neil for England.
Yep, I'll start off and then I'll pass on to Neil. So it was a bit of both, really. So what I'm going to do is I'll just give you a bit of an overview of how we identified the topics, and then Neil will go into a bit more detail. So our topics of interest originate from that UK Marine Policy Statement, which is the framework for preparing marine plans and making decisions that affect the marine environment. We then took a tiered approach and produced a range of evidence that carried out research into the topics of interest. So these included things like a strategic scoping exercise, which was a technical evidence gathering exercise to bridge the gap between that marine policy statement and the individual marine plan areas. We produced a futures report for each area, which reviewed the past trends and made future projections for each sector within the marine policy statement. And then we carried out subnational plan analysis, which reviewed all subnational statutory and non-statutory plans that affect each of those plan areas. So all those documents and that data gathering formed part of our evidence base, which was our starting point. On top of this, we also carried out our stakeholder engagement, which is at the core of our marine planning process. And this started with stakeholders highlighting issues that they had in the marine area, along with evidence to support those issues as well. We then took those, we streamlined the issues and carried out further internal data gathering around those topics. And then the evidence that we produced and the stakeholder issues, they were the formation of the topics of interest. However, throughout the process, these were reviewed, and we did accept any new issues that arose and adjusted to new government direction when required as well. So I'll pass on to Neil to provide a bit more detail.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. Yes, following on from what Amy's just said there, we use the UK Marine Policy Statement as our framework, if you like, for preparing our marine plans. That gave us the bones of which to hang off a marine plan or a series of marine plans. Following on from the point that Amy got to, we carried out a strategic scoping exercise, which gave us the technical evidence to bridge the gap between the overarching information provided in the framework of the Marine Policy Statement and the individual requirements of our individual regional marine plan areas. This involved an assessment of both the current and future interests across all marine plan areas in England. So we had a cohesive whole for England, as well as a sub-regional distinctiveness in there. That gave us our strategic approach, so we could plan each regional marine plans individually, but linked to the overall framework of the strategy, and also ensured that the needs of all our areas are identified very early on in the planning process, so we could really get down into the trenches and find out what the social economic needs were of our stakeholders. In support of that, we carried out a subnational plan analysis, where we looked at relevant terrestrial planning and other management plans that had an impact on our sea areas, to see how that would affect our plans going forward. And this formed part of our evidence base right at the very start of marine planning itself. At the beginning of the process, we asked stakeholders to highlight any issues, opportunities, challenges, threats they had in the marine area. We also, with that, we did ask them to supply any necessary evidence, so we could QA that and make sure that, you know, we were all aware of what the issues were, so we could come to a consensus. This was part of our call for issues and evidence stage right at the very start of marine planning. Once we'd gone through that process, we streamlined these outputs into a single list of issues, and then carried out our own internal research to look for further evidence, identifying any data gaps, commissioning reports, and generally speaking to stakeholders to ensure that we had their ambitions correctly mapped and that we're able to support those ambitions with the correct relevant level of detail in evidence. We published that information, and then we carried on with further engagement to analyse the information we had and sort of hone in on any gaps that we could find. We also used that to identify any new issues that arose and adjusted our sort of plan making to reflect that, as well as any sort of government directions that might influence the way we went into marine planning. The way we assess demands from the various economic sectors, primarily through the issues and evidence gathering exercise, listening to stakeholders, speaking to stakeholders, and then wherever further information was required, we commissioned projects I just mentioned, and then we were able to give a full assessment to give us clarity on the direction that both we wanted to do as a marine planning authority, and also to reflect the interests of stakeholders. So getting buy-in of stakeholders was quite important in this process. Data available. Yes, we had that in general terms. We had a lot of data we could use. We did ensure that we quality assured that data though, to make sure it met the specific needs of marine planning. Mapping these demands, areas of interests. We tried to be spatial where we can. Certain elements of marine planning in the UK are spatial. For example, areas of aggregate extraction, potential areas of wind energy, oil and gas installations. So where we could be spatial in our planning, we were. However, that was all evidence-based. And for some topics, we just didn't have the level of detail or evidence we needed to be specific spatially. This could be because the methodology hadn't been produced, or it wasn't feasible to carry out a data gathering exercise at that scale. But where spatial data was available, we included that our Explore Marine Plans mapping data alongside the policies to enable plans to be as spatially adaptable as they can, ensuring that social economic factors were built in. And I think that's it for that question for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Amy. I can give the floor to Salario for the Spanish side.
Yes. Okay, so the issue of the definition of the area for each sector, or for its uses and activities, and how we have done it in relation with the engagement of stakeholders. We have made an approach that was based first on let's say analyzing the official vision, the national vision for each of these strategic sectors, like for example energy, fisheries, etc. We first looked into the national plans and also the regional plans to try to understand, like in a scoping process, what are the objectives for each of these uses and activities, and then we made also a discussion process with the administrations, with the sectoral administrations, to try to make sure that we are reflecting in our plans the aims and the demands of each of these maritime sectors for our 5 marine subdivisions. And then we had the challenge of the engagement of other stakeholders, let's say the private sector representatives, the NGOs, etc. So this engagement was done by several ways. We made some participation events, some meetings, but unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the efforts that we allocated to consult and to discuss with stakeholders other than administrations were not so so relevant as we would like to. In fact, we had many inputs from, for example, some specific sectors like energy and fishery sectors. We have specific discussions with them regarding the interactions and the proposals of energy and offshore wind areas in our plans. But other sectors that, for example, the tourism, which is very important in some areas of Spain, did not participate so much. So our perception is that more or less we have reflected the real situation of the sectors and the future demands. Stakeholders discussions more or less gave us to the conclusion that we were reflecting in the maps their ambition and their demands. But however, as I said before, we didn't have an optimal stakeholder engagement process in our plans, and we would like to work in the coming years to improve and to go into deeper in deeper detail in this stakeholder participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sagrario. So Hervé, for the French side.
Yes, we have different problem to involve stakeholders in the definition of the area of specific use. We have difficulties with moving activities like fishing, for instance, or for to characterize the stake or the issues with to protect the environment with moving species like marine mammals or seabirds, and it's always difficult to have for every stakeholders to be okay with the data and to share the diagnosis on moving activities or moving environmental species. We try to work with all the stakeholders in the sea basin. We have events with the stakeholders 2 or 3 times a year to share our data and to share the diagnosis and to define the area of specific use. We have sometimes we have difficulties to. It was difficult to have the trust and the confidence of the stakeholders, because if they share data, sometimes they are afraid that we use data for other things that MSP. For the fisheries, they are afraid that we use the data to control their activity and not to they use the data for the maritime spatial planning directive. And it was a long road to have the confidence and that the fishing activity trust that it's lunchtime in France, so people are trying to get in my office. So it's difficult, but with the time we have good relationships with the stakeholders, but it was the very long processes to have that trust.
Okay. Thank you, Hervé. So looking to the word cloud, thanks for your contribution. There is quite a lot of words. I guess that the most raised topic and words are very consistent with the contribution of our four panelists. There is the link between the use of the data for evidence as an evidence to feed and to support the dialogue with the stakeholders and the consultation with them in order to build trust and a shared vision. So this very the tight linkage between the data use and the stakeholder consultation is quite well expressed in the word cloud. So I guess we are all okay with that. So we can move on to the last topic. It's about the dissemination of the maritime plans in order to get ownership from stakeholders on that. So the question is out, did you face difficulty in the objective to have your national plans understood by the stakeholders, and how did you manage to disseminate these plans in an understandable way? Maybe Amy or Neil for England, and can I ask you to be quite short because we are running to the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Del. Yes, I'll keep this very short. The quick answer is yes, we did have difficulties in making marine plans understood by stakeholders. As a new process, one of our ambitions from the start was to address the lack of understanding of marine plans with our key stakeholders. Planning and management of the sea, as you know, is a complex issue, particularly over high-level considerations of whether marine plans should be spatial and prescriptive or broader in scope and enabling to reflect the gaps in data and thereby manage stakeholder expectations. In developing the plans, we had to balance the needs of the various, sometimes competing stakeholder viewpoints in order to reach a broad consensus in support of marine planning. So in order to engage with stakeholders and communicate marine plans, we used an iterative approach to plan making, seeking stakeholder views at various stages of the plan making process, right from our initial call for issues, back with evidence, through policy drafting, and we had consultations with the public and stakeholders at those points, and we had a full public consultation on the draft marine plans prior to full publication. Primarily we engaged through workshops at the key stages. Workshops explained how marine plans are being developed, how the aims, objectives and plan policies were being enhanced using stakeholder feedback, and we reinforced this at every stage with our Explore Marine Plans portal. We found like a visual representation or map of the marine area made it a lot easier for stakeholders to grasp the basic concepts of marine planning. As I said, we use a phased approach. For external implementation of plans, we ensured that stakeholders were introduced to the concepts of implementation and what that would mean for them, specifically whether that would mean a change to their own systems and working practices or highlight any internal knowledge gaps they might have to help us with their training requirements. And we did this primarily through face-to-face webinars. Latterly, because of COVID, we've been doing that digitally online, but the principle is the same. We speak to as many stakeholders as we can, reprioritize those stakeholders who are key decision makers to make sure that they're really aware of their, not just their statutory obligations under marine planning, but also how marine planning can help them develop as a business, blue economy, that kind of thing. We used 3 phases for our training in implementation. Phase 1 was delivered before the draft plans were published. Phase 2 coincided with the publication of draft plan, and phase 3 was delivered once we adopted marine plans. We are aiming for a phase 4, which will be refresher training, which will be delivered at a future date once organisations have been using plans and perhaps have some questions they didn't realise they had before plans were adopted. I'll be as quick as I can, 10 more seconds. Some of the difficulties we encountered centred on explaining the broad scope and enabling nature of marine plans, how we tackled spatial aspects where we could. Most of our stakeholders are more familiar with the UK terrestrial planning regime, which has a higher spatial content. So part of our implementation strategy was to explain the broader scope and the enabling nature of plans. That seemed to be the key point, that once we got through that and people accepted that and understood it, then we found implementation and training on marine plans went forward much more smoothly. Okay, I'll stop there because I'm really aware of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. Quick answer from Saguario from Spain.
Yes. Okay. So for dissemination of plans, I agree that plans can be really huge documents, difficult to understand for the common people, and we have from the administration to make an effort to facilitate the ownership and the capacity to understand how the plans are affecting to the maritime sectors and to the people in general. In Spain, we have made some efforts, like for example, we designed a leaflet, a dissemination leaflet some years ago. We have made executive summaries from our documents, and of course the geoportal, that I think is the most powerful tool that we have right now to facilitate the people to understand what really the plans are resulting and are modifying a specific sector, etc. But we think that we have a lot to do. We have proposed some specific measures in our plans regarding the dissemination and the stakeholders participation. For example, one measure is to develop a participation strategy for stakeholders to somehow fill the gaps that I explained before, and to improve the engagement and the participation and the understanding of these plans in the whole society and in the target sectors in the coming years. And also we have plans to develop a mobile application for the users of the sea, for the people who already are in the sea, that they could check everywhere what are the uses and activities that are in that place, what are the limitations, the restrictions, etc., and how the plans are affecting each part of the Spanish marine waters. So these are our main ideas for the moment, and let's see if we could go further in the coming years. Just a last question is that the royal decree in Spain obliged the administration to guarantee the public access of the maps and the geographical information that have been produced for the plans in a way that is coherent with Inspire Directive, etc. So we have this legal obligation, and apart from this legal obligation, we have the other types of initiatives that we think are also important and necessary to improve the awareness and the knowledge of the plans. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Saguario. So give the floor to Hervé for the France.
Yes. So the integrative dimension of maritime planning obviously involves the treatment of many compartments. In France, we have we have the answer is that we integrate the MSF framework directive and the maritime spatial planning directive in the same document. So it's very the sum of the production is very important. We have 2,000 of pages between the strategic document and this action plan. So it's we have made also leaflets, summaries, but it's very difficult for the stakeholders or the public to understand what we are making and what would be the benefits of this MSP document. As a conclusion, we've seen that the stakeholders of the public only read the maps or not the text, but the maps. off is difficult for me because I'm French and my English is very poor. So, but we have to work on the visual representation of the documents and the map, because the public and the stakeholders don't have the time to read such a document of thousands of pages.
Okay, thank you, Hervé. So I guess we are aligned on this assessment that the way to simplify the information is important, and you pointed out the maps power as well as the other panelists. So I guess it's a very powerful tool, but quite sensitive one. So we have to build some data and data explanation. So it's rely on the previous topic we have addressed. If you go through the word cloud, you can see that there is a big matter of public consultation to get ownership of the stakeholder. The fact that is a long-term approach, so an iterative approach with several steps and all along the process. And I also noticed that you mentioned several kind of approaches or tools to disseminate, and there is maybe not one best tool or one best way to disseminate, but the perspective is to articulate and to launch different kind of dissemination to get the ownership of the whole range of stakeholders. So we have reached the end of our slots for this session. So I want to thank you all of the participants who followed up this session, and to thank particularly our speakers and panelists who kindly accepted to contribute, sometimes in a very late notice. So thank you very much for that. Just to give you some perspective on the following of the SIMAtlantic conference. So we have a quick lunch break until 1 p.m. UK time, so 2 p.m. For the continental time. And at this time, we'll have 2 parallel sessions. So you probably have registered for one of them. So one about environmental assessment and the other about lengthy interaction. And at 3 p.m. Still again UK time, 4 p.m. continental time, we have the final session with a global wrap-up of the findings and the key messages from all of the parallel sessions. So we'll try with colleagues from SHOM and SAMA to have a very quick sum up of what has been said in this very interesting session about data and stakeholder engagement. Actually, 5 bullet points, so the exercise is quite tough, but you will have a wrap up from Anne-Marie at this time. So thank you all. I wish you a good lunch time, and hope to see you on the coming session of the afternoon. So goodbye.